and they're going off of about 3-meter high waves, riding a kite that's almost too big for the conditions so that they get extra loft, and they're just seeing how high they can really push themselves.
Hey there, I'm Stefan Kesting, and this is the Strenuous Life Podcast. Hey everyone, I'm here today with Jack Rieder. Jack is an extreme sport champion at kiteboarding. He's a three-time junior national champion, one-time national finalist in the adult category, super skilled, super high rated, super high ranked kiteboarder. I'm just really looking forward to this because this is the next adrenaline sport that I want to get into. And I should say right off the bat, thank you for initially selling me a lot of my gear.
Yeah, no worries.
So just for the people who don't know, just explain kiteboarding. What is it?
I guess you could explain kiteboarding as if you've ever imagined wakeboarding, but you're controlling the boat. That's kind of the way that I like to explain it. So you're the one who gets to drive the boat by flying this kite as you're pulled along on what's equivalent to a wakeboard, but there's lots of different disciplines to that. But you're able to pull yourself around and you're flying what's kind of like a power kite that you would see people flying at the beach. It's the exact same thing as one of those giant kites you see, although you're going to have more control over it because you're harnessed in, and it gives you the power to jump and spin, and it's a lot of freedom, really.
So we're not talking a kite with a single string, like the classic kite that you would buy at a kite store.
No, exactly. It'll be a kite that has 4 strings to it, so 2 to the center, and then 1 to each steering end. So that way you can power it up, depower it, and steer it, choosing which direction you want to go, of course.
And how big are these kites that you're typically working with?
So my average kite size would be 11, which is an 11 square meter kite, which sounds pretty ginormous, although when you see it in the sky on your 22 meter long lines, it's actually quite small.
Okay. And then there's like 16 and 18 meter kites as well, but they're for super low wind conditions. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. So I've got a range of kites going from a 9 meter, an 11 meter, a 13, and a 15. So depending on the conditions each day, you'll decide what kite fits that day best.
Okay. Now you've competed in the open division, the open category. Help me out here.
Yeah, the Canadian Open Freestyle category there.
So what is the open freestyle judged on? What are you actually doing?
So in the open freestyle, that's going to be judged on kind of the same style that wakeboarding goes with. You want to have the kite really low with full power, and you're doing handle passes and spins. So a handle pass would mean passing the bar behind your back, and you incorporate that into tricks that include spinning and flips and so on.
Now, what about, I've seen a lot of your stuff on Instagram, and you're getting some pretty big air. Is that part of that discipline, or is that just something you're doing for fun?
Yeah, so I'm not super well into the whole big air aspect of kiteboarding, but that's something that I like to do a lot for fun. There is an actual category during the nationals called the big air competition, and during that will be your point when everyone puts a little device on their board, and it'll measure how high you go, and you're ranked on your maximum height as well as the risk factor that you put into that jump. Because when you're jumping so high, doing flips is extremely dangerous.
So what's the rank? Like, do you get half your points for how high you go and the other half of the points on risk factor? Is there any style factor as well?
Yeah, so the risk factor will incorporate your amounts of spins and your style, and then the height will generally be a 40% of your score. So for a lot of times, actually, people will go really high, and it can actually trump someone who had better style or a risk factor, just because the goal is to try and excite the fans and see how high we can really push the sport, right?
So what's the highest that you've gone?
So I have only used my device to see how high I've gone. I've hit 15 meters, but that didn't feel like the highest jump. So I've probably gone well near 20 meters or so.
Okay, and that's not your specialty. You're not like the Red Bull King of the Air, which is how a lot of people might have seen kiteboarding, which is those completely insane guys down in, was it Cape Town, I think?
Yeah, Cape Town, South Africa.
So what's the highest, we're going off topic here, but it's my podcast. I can go off topic if I want. What's the highest that anyone's ever gone?
So at the moment, there was a new record set about a week or two ago, and that was set at 29 meters, which is absolutely insane. So that's
basically 100 feet.
Yeah, basically 100 feet. And that would be down in Cape Town, where the wind is blowing about 50 knots, which would be
50 knots.
50, which would be approximately 120 kilometers an hour, I'd say.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's insane. And they're going off of about 3-meter high waves, riding a kite that's almost too big for the conditions so that they get extra loft. And they're just seeing how high they can really push themselves.
So just to put it in perspective, you're over water, but if you were to let go at the height of that jump, you'd be expecting to be injured on the way down. Even 50, quote, I'm doing air quotes here, even 15 meters or 20 meters, that's a long way to fall.
Yeah, exactly. So for the freestyle, there's definitely a risk factor to it, but it's not quite near the same as a big air factor of risk. Because when you're doing that big air, if you're up at that height and you start to do flips, you can really easily lose control of your kite. And if you're losing control of that kite at that height, it can not only drop you out of the sky, but it can actually pull you quicker towards the water.
Oh, excellent. So you get accelerated on your downward.
Exactly.
If your kite you were up at 20, 30 meters and all of a sudden the kite dives, that would pull you back down into the ground.
So if you're up at that height and you get upside down and then you lose track of where you're flying the kite and you start flying it down, that's when things go extremely wrong. So there are people who have ended up in hospitals and so on, right?
Okay. So I'm just trying to orient people here and myself. So we got freestyle, we got big air. There must be other disciplines as well.
Yeah. So right now, kiteboarding is really cool because there's so many disciplines that are coming out of it. So at the moment, it seems like surfboard riding has become very popular. So basically, you're riding the exact same thing that you'd see a surfboarder riding on the waves, although you have a kite to power you as well. So it gives you a little bit more freedom to get into those waves that you wouldn't be able to paddle into with the regular surfboard.
So you get into way more trouble, is what you're saying.
That's the issue, right? You can get into bigger waves and you can get yourself out of trouble better. Although if you go and you make a mistake, if your kite ends up in that wave with you, it can go way worse than just regular surfing.
Yeah, it's like be stuck in a washing machine with a bunch of string.
Exactly.
You'd be tight. Like you could get I used to work with a guy who had 9.5 fingers because he was a raft guide. And one time he was lowering a raft down a rapid and the raft got away on him and the string wrapped around his finger and pop. And he's out there in the wilderness guiding a bunch of clients and he's just lost most of one finger. So I imagine getting tangled up with a powered kite and a bunch of rope around various parts of your body can't be a good thing.
Yeah, I've got a buddy who the exact same thing, his kite powered up and he had a line wrapped around his finger. And
on purpose or by accident?
By accident, yeah.
Okay.
He went to do a handle pass and when you're passing it behind your back, you obviously don't have an exact idea of where all of your lines are and things can go wrong and he dropped the bar and so that line wrapped around powered up and he lost part of a finger.
Now I've seen footage of people, I saw footage of I think a man and his sister skiing the Northwest Passage, like the very, very top of the North American continent, but they were using kites to do it. So there's also kite skiing. Yeah.
It's super cool how versatile kiteboarding really is because anything that you can propel yourself on, you can basically use a kite to do.
Yeah, there's people using buggies and little ski buggies as well, aren't they?
Exactly, yeah. So before I actually learned to kiteboard, I had went to a little shop. I bought one of those smaller trainer kites. So it's a kite with just 2 lines that will pull you, but just not nearly as much as a real kite. So it's good for learning.
So 2 or 3 square meters.
Yeah, exactly. I had a 2-meter kite. And so what I did was before even going and taking any lessons, I just went to the local beach and I put the board down on the little sidewalk along there and just rode it back and forth.
A skateboard?
With a skateboard, yep.
Okay. And was that good training I gotta imagine that would be good training.
Yeah, it's obviously not identical, but it gives you the idea of controlling a kite while making sure you've got the foot positioning correct, right?
Yeah. I'm still traumatized from the time that I tried snowboarding because we were in Gstaad, which is like a sort of Whistler, the Boulder of Switzerland. Mm-hmm. And my mom was like, "You've got to try, snowboarding. I'm going to pay for a lesson." So we got a lesson. You'd think Swiss snowboard instructors would be good. And the lesson basically consisted of, okay, point the board down the hill and then swing your arms from side to side as hard as you can to change direction. And I don't know if he was taking the piss out on us, but later my brother taught me more in about 30 seconds about snowboarding And this guy taught me in an hour. It was just a very, very painful hour.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Okay, have we run out of kiting disciplines yet? No, there's a whole proximity skiing thing that they're doing.
Yeah, exactly. So the skiing thing is really interesting. I've only done it a handful of times on a little lake out in Whistler, although you can go up into the backcountry, and I'm planning on doing that this winter. So you would have to take a snowmobile because it's obviously not allowed on the resort mountains. But you can go into the backcountry and you just pump your kite up, you strap your snowboard to your feet, and you can cruise around on the regular powder. But the coolest part to me is the ability to jump off of the cliffs, because it's kind of like a paraglider, although you're able to ride all the way up to that cliff. So it's really neat because you can ride straight off of a cliff and float perfectly down at the bottom of it and just continue riding.
What about the air currents? The air currents would get all muddled up near the cliff. Or how are you dealing with that?
Yeah.
Same problem that base jumpers would run into, I imagine.
So the idea, if the wind is blowing off of the cliff, so it's blowing you away from the cliff, that's where the biggest issues come in, because as you're falling, you're going into the wind shadow of the cliff.
Okay.
Although, so long as you ride off the windward side of a cliff, so meaning the wind is pushing towards that cliff, your kite will actually float you away from the cliff upwind. So you'll actually land a nice, safe distance away from that cliff, and you can just fly your kite in smooth wind all the way till you land at the bottom.
All right. I mean, once again, I think Red Bull. Do we know how many people Red Bull has killed? Because they make some amazing videos. There's all kinds of Red Bull videos about guys flying the Alps or flying some crazy-ass mountain range with kites and skis, or kites and boards. So that's what we're talking about here.
Yeah, same idea. Or another really cool thing is that when you're riding along, if you ride down a hill fast enough, your apparent wind will build up such that you start to build lift, because your kite, as you continue to gain speed...
What do you mean by apparent wind? Is that like the sailing? I hear sailors talk about apparent wind. Explain it for me, please. I never really understood it.
Yeah, I'm not super good in this, but basically what it means is that the faster you go, the more you're going to be building airflow through your kite. And so that direction, say you're riding across the wind. So the faster you go, the more the wind direction will shift towards where you're heading.
Okay.
Because you're going to be building speed in that direction. So rather than the wind coming straight across from you, it'll start to come more from ahead of you. And so that's where you can start to experience this feeling with snow kiting, is that you are riding fast enough down the hill because of gravity and being on a snowboard that you can start to build apparent wind from where the hill is. So the wind will start to be appearing like it's coming up the hill. And as you start to ride faster and faster, your kite will want to pull you into the air. That's how you jump as well, is that you're creating motion for that kite to build power in it.
Okay.
And so as you're riding down this hill, you're going to create power in your kite, and eventually you'll feel that you can just sheet in on that bar and you'll start to float. And because the hill is slowly lowering in altitude and you're somewhat keeping consistent because of that wind,
the hill falls away from you.
The hill falls away from you, and you can actually just float further and further into the sky.
Okay. That must be an amazing feeling.
Yeah, it's quite a neat floating feeling.
So back in the day, I used to do a lot of canoeing and kayaking, long distance, like long trips. And I would always end up trying to cobble together some kind of sail out of a jacket and some sticks that I'd found in the bush, some rope. And the more I think about it, the more I want to take a trainer kite, a 2-3 meter kite, and use that, because I'd be able to get that up into the sky where there's stronger, more consistent wind than whatever's down at the lake level. So there are people out there using these kites for canoeing, kayaking, sea kayaking, that sort of thing?
Yeah, it's become a really great way of propelling really anything on the water, because a lot of the time with water you can find at the low altitudes, the wind can be very gusty. And as you get it higher, you'll find it's just windier and smoother, right? So I've seen a few people over at Jericho Beach that have actually come out on the windy days, and they paddled way upwind, and then they slowly reeled out these kites and then just flew them all the way back down. And they get going really fast as well, right? Because these things have some power when you start moving them around.
Oh, yeah. Even just playing with the smaller kites. I don't think I've ended up on my face yet, but I know my daughter wanted to take just a small 3 meter kite and managed to catch the wind and probably spent a good 10 feet in the air, and then
Oh,
did
yeah.
a face slide across the grass, came up with a grass in her braces, and half laughing and half crying, and then tried to do it again. So good for her. So those are some of the styles of kiteboarding anyway.
Mhm.
And where do you see yourself going? So right now you're doing the freestyle.
Yeah,
Freestyle open.
exactly. I'm more into the freestyle aspect of kiteboarding right now. Although there's one aspect of kiting that's really been growing on me, and it's called foil boarding. So what happens is you've got it's the exact same idea as how a plane flies in the air. You've got a wing that uses the water to fly. It's like
a hydrofoil boat.
A hydrofoil boat, exactly, yeah. So then you take that wing and you place it on the bottom of a mast, which is just a long metal pole, basically, attached to a board. And so once you get going, you can eventually create enough lift in that wing that you just pop out of the water, and it feels like a never-ending day of powder on the mountain.
Okay.
Because you don't feel the waves, you don't feel chop, and everything goes silent because there's no noise from hitting any waves, any water, and it's a really soothing feeling.
So I think I've heard people talk about that, and they say that they can also go much sharper upwind than they can with a regular board. Is that true?
Yeah, exactly. Because you haven't got any of that drag, because these foils are so efficient, you can go almost straight upwind. It's quite incredible. So in one day, the other bonus is, of course, that these foils don't need as much wind because they have less drag. So a lot of the days in Squamish, when it's not quite windy enough, I'll take the foil out and just go for a cruise.
Squamish being your sort of home turf.
Yeah, that's kind of my home spot in the summer for kiteboarding.
It's really, really popular there. And you drive by there on a summer's day and it's just nothing but kites.
Yeah, it's gotten huge. Even since I started, every year it's consistently growing and you can tell the difference.
So back to the foil thing. So it allows you to ride much smoother. It allows you to go almost straight upwind. Is that going to open up new frontiers of sort of trickery and jumping, or is it just a different?
It opens up a lot of opportunity for higher jumping.
Because you're going faster?
Yeah, because you're able to build more lift from that apparent wind, because you can get you have less drag. So when you're riding in a straight line, you can build up more speed, which then leads to more lift in your jumps, of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, now, stupid question. So when you're up there in the air, or when you're in the middle of a trick, I mean, you've obviously got to concentrate on the water and your board and where your feet are and where your arms are. But at the same time, as you alluded to earlier, you've got to keep control of the kite and fly that. And I'm assuming you can't just keep it stable up there, that depending on what you're trying to do, you're trying to fly it around and make it do certain things.
Yeah, exactly. On a nice, regular, calm and controlled jump, you can just send the kite straight above you and you hold it there, and then you steer it back in the direction that you want to go when you land. Although when you get high enough, you'll start to pivot underneath the kite because you end up getting swung below the kite as you're in the air. And so that would mean that the kite would either outfly you and you'd fall out of the sky, or you have to make sure that you're flying that kite back and forth to keep it in the right area.
So now you're in the air, but you're still flying it, you're still S-ing it back and forth.
Exactly.
To keep it in the right sort of part of the sky.
Exactly, yeah.
So another maybe dumb question, but I'm sure a lot of people are thinking, how difficult is it to spin all these plates when you're in the middle of a jump or a trick? I mean, that's a lot of things that you got to keep track of.
Yeah, it totally adds up. All these different things you're thinking about. Although the kite, after a long enough amount of time, it becomes second nature. So you start to just be focusing on what you're doing with your body and your board. And that kite just is an extension of you, really.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of it as a paddle. And that makes sense to me because you put your paddle over here and then you push or pull however you have to. And I imagine that's just a slightly trickier paddle.
Exactly. You stop thinking about what to do with that paddle. You're just wanting to go somewhere and you know that this is what you have to do, right?
So were you always a board sport guy? Like, were you a skater kid? Were you a wakeboard kid?
Yeah, when I was younger, I grew up with my dad owning a boat. So we were always out on the water, and I got into wakeboarding really young. So that was something I was really interested in. Mm-hmm. Although I never got into the skateboarding thing. I was always really bad at it, funny enough. I think for me, being locked into the board is kind of the aspect that I appreciate about board sports.
So we should just clarify there, like most of the kiteboarding boards have got toe straps, or the straps come across the arch of your foot essentially.
Exactly.
Except you've gone a step further.
Yeah, so I guess it's because of my wakeboarding background that I've felt like I need to be a little bit more locked into my board when I kiteboard. So I ride with what's exactly the same as a wakeboarding binding. So you slip your foot in fully and it will clamp up and you zip it all the way tight. And it means that you won't release from that board, of course.
So if you took the little fins off the board, you could be snowboarding.
Yeah, it's the exact same idea as snowboarding. You're fully cleated into that board and you're not coming out.
So there are advantages of control. There must be some disadvantages there as well. Otherwise, everyone would do it.
Yeah, exactly. There's definitely some disadvantages. With a regular board, if you realize things are going wrong, when you're up in the air upside down, you just kick your board off of your feet. And it's kind of just like cliff jumping, really. You're going to hit the water, but it's not going to go horribly. The issue is when you have that board attached to you, it can give you way more whiplash as you hit the water, because if the board catches before you, then it will create even more momentum.
So you're going to come to a sudden halt.
Exactly. You just stop dead in your tracks, and that's usually how injuries happen.
Have you ever been injured that way?
I have. Thankfully, I've only had one major injury. The rest have just been scares. But my one injury that has actually affected my kiteboarding, I was out for about 6 months. Was when I crashed after doing a big air jump, and I was wearing bindings, of course, and so that tension that built up from that immediate stop had torn my meniscus.
Was there a lot of twisting when you hit, or was it just like pulling the knee up the top part of your leg away from the bottom part of your leg?
Yeah, so the issue was that the water was too shallow where I was doing this, and as I caught, I then came to an abrupt stop, but then my body had also hit the ground a little bit, which rotated me inwards, and that really dug my right knee into the center of the board, which that twisting motion really got me.
And that was a meniscus tear or a ligament tear?
Yeah, so I tore my meniscus, thankfully not too serious, and I was able to go and get surgery on that, and they just trimmed it down.
Okay, so you still have a meniscus in there?
I do.
Okay. Yeah, it seems like in the old days, they just used to pull the whole bloody thing out, and now they've realized, well, maybe it serves a purpose.
Yeah,
they should try and leave some of it in there. But that was a 6-month recovery, eh?
Yeah, well, the issue was the actual recovery time was only about a month and a half. The issue is going through the steps of MRIs and surgery and all of those things.
So clearly, if you're doing this sport, you've got a ton of energy. How on earth did you not go insane during those 6 months?
I was doing a lot of physiotherapy during that time, as well as just trying to find other things that I could do. So I ended up doing a lot of sports that I was able to do that were somewhat more mellow. For some reason, soccer actually was okay for it.
Really? Given how many people hurt their knees playing soccer?
Yeah, it's funny enough. I was on a soccer team, and so I continued to play soccer, and I would just take it a little bit easier. As long as I was going in straight lines, my knee felt okay. So I just tried to keep low impact on my knee, and if there was any time during the sports that I was playing that I felt like something might go wrong, I would just step back and let it be.
What about just a massive face plant? People think of water as soft, but it's not soft when you're coming in hard and fast. So have you ever hit your head or broken a rib or anything like that?
Yeah, as you're coming in at that speed, water always seems so friendly, but it's really not when you're coming in quite like that. So the biggest problem is when you catch your heel edge. If you catch your front edge on your toe side, generally it'll just be a big slap in the face, and you'll be a little winded, but you're not going to have any serious issues.
That's because you're falling flat on your face.
You're falling forward, exactly. So it hurts more, but it doesn't cause as serious of damage. It's more when you hit the back of your head when you're catching your heel edge. So I've had a few times where I've caught my heel edge and everything kind of just becomes a blur, and then you wake up a few seconds later realizing that you're unconscious. And the scary thing about that is on the water, you could really easily swallow some water and it couldn't go so well, right?
Are you wearing a life jacket? But it might not keep your head above water.
Yeah, exactly. So with kiteboarding, I'm a hypocrite in this way. I suggest that you wear a life jacket to start, which I did, but then the second you try not wearing a life jacket, you'll understand why people don't wear life jackets. The aspect of kiteboarding that really gets me is the freedom. And when you're not wearing that life jacket, you just feel so much more mobile in the freedom of your different motions with your board and your grabs and everything, right?
So when you knocked yourself out and you were in the water.
Yeah, so you're in the water and you don't have any flotation. Responsibly, I probably should have, but
Yeah, you've done your disclaimer.
Exactly. Yeah, thankfully I've come to every time that this has happened, and I've managed to not have any issues. I just felt really dizzy, and I went in, rode back to shore, and called it quits. And I think I've had a few concussions from that. Nothing serious enough to really warrant changing my lifestyle for a little bit. But I've had a few times where I woke up a little sick in the night knowing that something was not right.
Well, you've also got a safety boater. Or do you always have a safety boater?
Yeah, so in the summertime, that's a great part of Squamish is that there's the retrieval service out there. And those people are always keeping track of who's on the water and watching out for anybody in danger.
So if you were to crash and then not be moving around after, they'd come and get you.
Yeah, they would likely pick up on it. They've got their binoculars and they're watching for everybody's safety, right?
Okay. Do they charge you if they come pick you up, or is it like a flat fee and then they rescue you if they need to?
Yeah, it's just a membership fee to be riding out at the spit each summer. It's not too bad. It would be $20 a day, or you can get a membership for my age, it's actually only $80.
Okay.
For an adult, it's about $160. But yeah, it's well worth it for the safety that you...
Well, how many days a year are you kiteboarding?
Last year, probably would have been near 200 days or so. I try to go as often as possible. In the summertime, I'm going nearly every day because it's windy more than 100 days throughout the summer. And you can go basically every day straight from April until September. And so that whole time I'm consistently going. And the winter time, you're watching for the storms to catch, and you can end up missing a few days, of course.
Right. And you just came back from Maui.
Yeah.
So, and what were you doing in Maui?
Yeah, I was in Maui doing some kiteboarding, taking a little bit of photos and getting media, of course, for my brand and everything like that.
So when I initially bought my gear off you, I thought you were a knowledgeable guy. But then somebody at the store, as I was just checking out, goes, well, you should really check out his Instagram because he's famous. He's somebody. So I did. And there's a ton of stuff. So if people want to look for you, they should, on Instagram, is Jack_Rieder. How do you spell Rieder?
It's Rieder.
And then there's another weird underscore in the back because some bastard took your name.
I know. It's so many people had that name for some reason.
Did you make up that name, given that you're riding boards?
It's funny. That's just my name, and it suits what I've been interested in my whole life really well.
Fortuitous. But you're also doing, you said, videos, right?
Yeah.
So what's the process like? You want to produce, I don't know, Jack's Amazing Day. What's the process like?
Yeah,
so the video's going to be like 5 minutes long at the end of it.
Exactly.
So it must take like 6 minutes to film
it? Not quite, unfortunately. With kiteboarding, the issue that comes with trying to make a film is that the conditions are never the same. So trying to find the right time to have people out there filming is the most difficult part, in my opinion. And then it's also coming up with an idea for how you want this film to look. So what I'd start out by doing is having an idea of what the tricks that I want to do in this video will be, because you'll have an idea of where you want to go with what disciplines and everything like that. And then it would be having someone out there to film. And then from there, you really just go out and you try and land the tricks that you've been hoping for. And a lot of the time, you'll head out there and the wind just won't be the right direction for it, or it'll be a little bit up and down, and you can't quite do it. So in the end, if you were to try and make a video that's about 5 minutes long, it might take you a month or so to get what you're really proud of. It's a little rough.
It's a lot of time.
Yeah.
So I know you watch ski videos and stuff. They spend 2/3 of the video is them going to the bar or hanging out at the ski lodge or driving, packing up the cars to go driving somewhere. Do you pad your videos the same way?
It seems like every single one of the videos has started to become that same start out by waking up, you put your stuff in your car, you ride, and then you end it with a sunset, right? Mm-hmm. And it's a really cool way of making a video because it shows that whole lifestyle, although it seems like it's kind of becoming old because everybody's doing it. So the idea is to try and find something that will be interesting and a little bit different, right? Mm-hmm.
And you put these videos, how do these videos get distributed then?
So I put them on Vimeo and then share them on my Instagram.
Okay. Yeah. No YouTube?
No, unfortunately.
Okay. So tell me that by next week, you take some of those old Vimeo videos and start uploading them to YouTube. You have to.
Yes.
The right answer is everywhere that you can Do you have a Facebook page too?
I do have a Facebook page.
Okay, and on your Facebook page too. How do people find it on Vimeo?
On Vimeo, it's just Jack Rieder.
No underscore.
No one stole my name on there.
Okay. Somebody's betting that you're going to end up becoming a multimillionaire, and then they'll take your Instagram name and start posting really embarrassing things and wait for you to buy them out.
Yeah.
Hijacking your name. So you talked a little bit about your injuries. So what's the balance between conditioning and actually doing the sport? And it's, I think, something that all athletes struggle with is how much time do I spend in the gym building up my body, recovering from stuff, versus how much time do I spend actually doing doing the judo, doing the kiteboarding, skiing on the mountain. What's your balance there?
Yeah, so in the summertime, that's kind of the prime win time. So you don't want to mess up your days by feeling too sore or too tired from your workout the night before. So in the summertime, I tend to just wake up and kiteboard all day and then continue on from there throughout the whole summer. In the wintertime, you do have a little bit more spare time, and that's when I try to go to the gym as much as possible. Although this winter with school, it's been a little bit tougher.
Does the conditioning that you're doing in the gym actually help the sport that much?
You can totally notice a difference. Last winter, I worked out a lot and I was pretty serious with it. And when I first got back to Squamish in April, my first few sessions out there, I could tell that I was noticeably stronger and it was much easier to perform the tricks I was hoping to do.
How much strength is involved in doing the trick? It's really hard for people on the outside to tell, because part of doing a trick is to make it look effortless, right? We watch gymnasts do these flips and they're smiling and they're motionless in the air, but it's actually incredibly difficult and a ton of strength is required. Is kiteboarding, is a kiting trick the same thing?
Yeah, it's basically like spinning around on a pull-up bar, because your kite's going to be above you and you're holding all of your weight on that bar and supporting yourself, using your muscles to pull it behind your back and so on.
So you're not hanging off the harness per se.
Yeah, so in big air, you would stay hooked in, because that way you have a little bit more freedom to fly the kite and it's just more simple, of course. But at the low altitude, when you're just doing your freestyle tricks, to pass the bar behind your back, you'd need
it can't be hooked in.
Of course.
Okay,
yeah.
So it is really, you're hanging off of a set of monkey bars or a pull-up bar.
Yeah.
And trying to. So how many pull-ups can you do?
I actually not sure. It would be definitely more than 20 though.
Okay.
I can do quite a lot of pull-ups.
I guess you're pulling all summer long.
Yeah, pull-ups are the one thing that are very simple for me at this point. It feels like I'm right at home now, right?
How hard is it on your body, assuming you don't have a big accident, assuming you don't have take a big face plant or concuss yourself or tear your knee or anything like that? How does your body feel at the end of a day of kiting?
Yeah, with kiteboarding, it seems like the first 20 minutes you're out there, if you're really pushing yourself, that's when you're going to either progress or land the most of your tricks that you're most consistent with.
Okay.
So when I go out kiteboarding, I try to do the first 20 minutes of trying new tricks and seeing if I can progress the most.
So no warm-up? Straight to the big stuff?
I'll do about one of each trick I know I can land, just super quickly, bang them off in like 30 seconds, back and forth, just to make sure I have that confidence there to try new things. And then from there, I'll try and progress as much as I can. And you can start to feel when you don't have that strength to pull through what you're trying. And at that point, I might do a couple more of my confidence tricks, and then you can go in and hang out and then go out a little bit later.
So if you can, talk us through a trick that you're trying to work on right now. What kind of spins are involved? Like, let's see how your verbal gymnastics match your kite gymnastics. Keeping in mind that most of us don't have a clue of what you're talking about.
So at the moment, the trick that I'm trying to figure out, like the main trick that's kind of on my mind every day right now, would be a double handle pass. So in technical terms, it's called a backside 7. And so what you're doing is you're releasing yourself from the water, you're fully extending your body, and then you're passing the bar behind your back twice in the same trick, and then landing heel side, continuing the same direction.
So the board keeps on pointing the same way the whole time that you're in the air?
Although it'll rotate, or it'll be doing a 720.
Oh, okay.
Although when you're landing, you're going the exact same way you began, and ideally at full speed again.
So is this something that you would have seen someone else do in competition and now, or on YouTube and go, that's next?
Yeah, that kind of seems to be the trick that's at the top level with all the pros that I look up to at the moment.
And I guess this has progressed a lot. I imagine that 5 years ago, nobody was even thinking of that.
Yeah, even a year or two ago, that used to be a trick that was very new and innovative. Although now it seems like every one of the people on that world tour that exists are all landing this trick consistently.
Is that somewhere that you want to go?
Potentially. I'm not sure exactly where I want to go with kiteboarding, although the freestyle aspect is definitely something I like. There's also rail riding now, which fits in a lot with my snowboarding background, so that might be where I progress more.
So that's where they build structures in the water and you ride up onto them like riding a rail at a snowboard park.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's the
God,
exact
the potential for injury there. My God, you're slamming into something. I guess the same thing out in the ski park.
Exactly. The scary thing is the kite doesn't stop pulling, so if you end up on the windward side of that rail, you're going to get crammed into it again, right?
You get cheese grated.
Yeah.
Or not cheese grated, repeatedly pummeled by all
you
the...
just keep getting smacked against it, right?
Would you wear a helmet for that or no?
Yeah, for that I definitely wear a helmet. Okay. It's one of those things where I can justify water not being too hard, although it really is. With the rails, it's something that if you
an 8x8 wooden post in the water.
Yeah, that's not going to be nearly as forgiving, right?
So can you actually make a living out of this? I know you're in school right now as well. What are you studying?
I'm studying arts and sciences, but I'm doing mostly courses that will allow me to market myself and keep progressing with the sport that I'm trying to...
So BA, essentially?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And like with an emphasis in marketing or an emphasis in...
Yeah, like graphic design, kind of to be able to understand that media production and all of those, and then economics and marketing and business type of idea.
So how do you manage, forget about work-life balance, how do you manage sport-school balance? Those are both pretty intensive activities.
Definitely. So the one benefit is doing school online. I have the ability to do school anywhere in the world at any time I would like. So what I'll do throughout the winter time is I'll wake up quite early, 6 o'clock or so if I need to go kiteboarding at any point, and I work for about 3 hours in the morning, and then kiteboard from 9 onwards. And then when the wind dies, you head home and you keep doing some schoolwork.
Okay. So there's kind of a built-in constraint. When the wind dies, you have to go home.
Definitely. I used to just hang out at the beach when there was nothing going on, but I can't quite beach bum anymore.
So when you look at the future of freestyle, sort of what's the holy grail move that people can imagine, but that nobody's pulled off yet?
It's funny, with the kiteboarding aspect of freestyle right now, it seems it's just becoming more and more spins. Although there are a few of the competitors creating a new style and really making it more creative again. So I guess for the time being, I'd like to see it go towards the same tricks, but with more of a smooth execution and incorporating grabs and making it look a little bit smoother and all that.
So how much is the sport is driven by the equipment versus the competitors? I mean, it's a new sport, so of course there's going to be a lot of people trying to figure out how to one-up the other guy, whether it's just pride or in competition. But also the equipment's evolved a ton in the last 10, 15 years, hasn't it?
Yeah. Over the last 10 years, it's become a completely different sport. It's one now that's so much more user-friendly and accessible to the public.
Why was it not user-friendly before?
Ahead of even 5 or 6 years ago, you didn't have a release system on your kite. So if anything were to go wrong, you're along for the ride until you hit something and it stops, of course.
Was this people used to get killed getting dragged across parking lots? They get dragged off the water onto the beach, over the sidewalk, into the parking lot, into a building. So that's what you're talking about.
Exactly.
So now you can just pull a safety strap and it's all gone.
Yeah, now there's a little red push away release system. And if you press on there, your kite flies away from you and you're safe and avoided all the harm.
How often do you have to release that?
I've actually never had to use my release. As long as you keep in mind your surroundings and you are aware of where you're going, you can be quite safe and avoid ever having to use that, really.
I guess we've been talking about sort of the extreme end of the sport. But I mean, there are a lot of people doing this recreationally.
Yeah, definitely. So in Squamish, I believe we have almost 700 members now that come out throughout the summer, and that's not by any means pros or anything like that. It's just people enjoying the sport and using Squamish as their playground on the water all summer.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's your favorite place in the world to do the kiteboard? What's the best place that you've been?
It's funny. I've been to a few different locations. Like I've been to a couple spots around Vancouver, but also I've been to Maui and Mexico, and I've got a few other plans. So I went to La Ventana a couple times now, because that seems to be a really accessible spot. It's quite simple to fly to, and it's got wind consistently all winter. And then Maui is a pretty great spot as well. Although, funny enough, I've always come home and felt like Squamish is just the best place on earth, really.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's no place like home.
Exactly.
Okay, you have sponsorships, but what I want to talk about is the process of getting sponsorships. Is it a big part of the game?
Yeah, kiteboarding is a pretty new sport. So with brands, they're looking for someone who's going to push the sport in a direction that they're trying to go. So with gaining sponsorships, the biggest thing is to be present in the community where you ride. So I guess I've only started about 3 years ago kiteboarding, actually. Although, yeah, I caught on to kiteboarding quite quick. The first year I was out there just about every day all summer. And then by the second year, I was competing and doing all that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just able to spend a lot of time doing it.
Yeah.
So, okay, sort of back to sponsorship. So maybe people listening to this, they're not looking for kiteboarding sponsorship, but there are a lot of jiu-jitsu athletes out there who are looking to get sponsored. There's a lot of, name a sport. Everybody would like a sponsorship because it would allow them more time to do their sport.
Exactly.
And less time working at Wendy's.
Definitely.
So you were saying being present in the community. So what does that mean?
Yeah, being someone that you want to be the person that if someone's finding new gear and needs to be set up with a new new equipment, they come to you for suggestions. That's kind of what a brand's looking for, is that the people in the community know you as someone who's trustworthy and respectful and friendly. And it's not just about being the best rider, I guess the best at jiu-jitsu. Mm-hmm. It's about being the most friendly and outgoing person that people are comfortable coming up to and chatting with.
So the term brand ambassador comes to mind.
Exactly.
Not being some douchebag who's...
Exactly.
I guess you could take it all... If you're going to go that way, you need to go all the way. You could just be the baddest ass of all the badasses, and maybe there'd be some, brand out there that would...
That likes the image.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But I think, in general, that's pretty good advice. So who are your sponsors, and, what do they give you?
So I ride for Air Rush Kiteboarding, and they set me up with all of my gear. And then support me in other ways every so often, of course. But
flying you to a competition, or
yeah, they'll help me with room at some location or anything like that. Yeah, so with the gear, they set me up with my whole quiver for the season, and then at the end I get to sell it off, and that helps me also support.
So you mean all your kites?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So you get the newest, latest, greatest kites after beating the crap out of... How often do you break a kite? If you're out there every day doing all this high-intensity stuff, they must occasionally be...
Yeah.
Tearing strings or tearing grommets or whatever.
Definitely. So the new gear that I've been on this last summer and throughout this winter has been pretty good. They've really upped the game in quality of kite gear right now. Although I have had a few little breakdowns. So I snapped a line throughout the summer. And then this winter we had a kite that tore just from the harsh pressure on it of the gusty Maui winds.
Sure.
Yeah, and then, of course...
But you're also using it in a way that 99% of people are never going to use it. If they go airborne, it's going to be by accident. And it's going to seem like 100 feet, but it'll really only be 10 feet above the ground.
Yeah, you're really pushing the limits of the gear that you're being given. The biggest thing that breaks down for me, I've gone through 3 boards now in 2 seasons, which is the one funny thing. And I guess that has a lot to do with the rail riding, just because you're grinding away at your base every time you hit a rail.
Right.
And with the sand from the beach, it just acts like sandpaper all over the base. And the boards wear down to a point where you come down from a hard landing and they just snap in half.
Well, I suppose they could build an 85-pound board built out of 18 million layers of Kevlar that would never happen to, but then that would probably have some performance effects.
Exactly.
So you're balancing weight versus performance, or weight versus durability.
Exactly.
So you can't really, again, if you're using it that way, you can't really hold it against the gear. It's almost your job to break boards.
Yeah, you almost want to see what's wrong with things to give feedback about where things need to be improved.
So I guess you're a brand ambassador and a, I don't know, guinea pig, a lab rat.
In a way, exactly.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much. Why don't we just go over one last time where people can track you down currently, and they should search for you on YouTube, because you are, this will come out in about 4 or 5 days. So you got 4 or 5 days to get a video up on YouTube. But where do they find you currently? Where's your main presence?
Right now, my main presence would be on Instagram. That would be Jack_Rieder_, and Rieder. And then it's just Jack Rieder on Facebook. And then Vimeo is Jack Rieder, although soon it'll be YouTube as well.
Awesome. You know, one of the reasons I'm giving you 5 days here is that you can go grab that title and screw that guy who's camping on your name. I'll round up some jiu-jitsu guys and we'll convince them to give the name back. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. It's really fun to watch your videos. It's been fun talking to you, and I hope to see you on the water at some point.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Podcast listeners, if you found this interesting or useful or entertaining, please pass this episode on to somebody else in your social circle or in your training circle. Surely there's somebody else out there who would also find it interesting. This is the way the podcast grows. It's an organic growth by people like you passing it on to their friends and the people that they know. I really, really appreciate this kind of sharing. So thank you so much in advance, and good luck with your training.